Hey y'all, hey, welcome to Melvina Motivates, the podcast. In this space, we are going to laugh, cry, but mostly heal and laugh some more. It is my goal to take you from stuck to your absolute greatest by sharing my personal healing journey with you. I'm clear that my life's purpose is to be a safe space, place for others so that they can return to their true self. Hop along for the ride. You won't be disappointed. So again, welcome to Melvina Motivates, the podcast. All right, everybody, welcome back. I'm so glad to be back. Here it is. We made it to episode 7. After this episode, we have just a few more to go. The next episode will have another guest. I'm so excited about our next guest. Episode 9, I already got that mapped out. I look forward to recording it. And then episode 10, bringing Mr. Prince Drive himself back in to conclude season 1 with me. So that should be a very fun and exciting episode. And to prepare for both of the future guests, I bought another microphone. So we should have really good, crispy quality throughout the rest of the season. And I'm excited about that. So, all right, let's get into this episode. First, we're going to do a quick recap and reminder that season 1's about to come to an end. We are going to do 10 episodes. We are now at episode 7, And the reviews that I've been getting from people are just like no other. I really thank my friends. I really thank the listeners for really giving me their honest feedback. They are really able to connect with the material that I've been able to put out. And of course, everybody has loved all of those wonderful sounds, effects, and features and magic that Prince Drive has been able to put definitely on each episode to help enhance each episode. So I thank all of you. Continue on with the reviews. And I appreciate that. Next up, school year. School year will be over with. Whenever you listen to it, this is currently the weekend of Juneteenth and Father's Day. My school and school district and network, we are concluding the 2021 school year this week. While everyone else has been out of school. I need to add that in there. It's like we're the last to get out. Damn! But either way, I look forward to that. Next up, this retrograde. Okay, I can't wait till it's over with. This retrograde has been a fucking doozy. Okay, and I say that with all emphasis on fucking doozy. Man, when I tell you, it's been, this energy that this retrograde has harnessed has not been good. And it's been a roller coaster. So I look forward to that. But later on in the week, they're saying that there's going to be a strawberry moon, a full moon on the 24th. And that energy is in Capricorn. So harness yourselves for that. All right. Goodness gracious. I have some interesting information to share with everyone. In episode 9, right? How that retrograde energy has shown up in my personal love life. And just in the space of relationships for me in general, whether they've been intimate, romantic, or, family or friends and all of that stuff. So brace yourselves for episode 9. Well, in the last episode 6, I got a chance to tell my truth in seriously how I have been feeling about, where my relationship with my mom or the turn that it has taken, since we've made it to that space, since we've made it to this space. And I didn't really go into details about another specific person, but either way, that entire episode was just kind of giving you guys information and the insight on where some of those important relationships in my life, where they are now. And the biggest takeaway that people have been able to really resonate and connect with is just the capacity, right? We do not possess the same capacities, and that's okay. That's really okay. That's super okay. And I appreciated the nice echo and fade out in my final words on that episode. And currently I'm trying to I just shared this with my girl Jalea. I'm like, I'm in between currently, like, fuck them people is on one end of the spectrum, and what would Jesus do is on the other. And I'm really trying to figure out where does Melvina stand on the spectrum. So I'll keep you guys posted with that. So it's interesting there when I was in graduate school, one of the first times, there's a book written by Ruby Payne. And she talks about how essentially African Americans, we tell stories backwards. And I thought that was interesting, right? Like, we kind of take you to the end and then we want to backtrack to all of the details. Like, we don't take you from beginning to end. We take you from end to beginning. And I kind of did that intentionally with the last episode. Like, I wanted you guys to get an understanding of where I currently was, so that when this episode came out, you would have a greater appreciation, number one, for the podcast, for me, and this body of work in general. And so let's hop into it. So the title of this podcast is Where Was I? Right? Or maybe Where Was I Then? And the original wording that I put after the title was denial, dysfunction. But then as I sat with the topic, the title, the experience, I'm like, the better wording to follow is disconnected. So let's get into it. Where was I, or where was I then? I was disconnected, before I was able to get to the space of acceptance. And that journey of acceptance is still in progress, still in progress. It's not complete, as you guys just heard. You heard my spectrum. But definitely, I was in a place where I was definitely disconnected with myself. And today, prior to recording, I was like, honestly, I was like, God, like, where do I start? How do I share this disconnection with the people? And right before taking this nap, or before getting up to kind of move about the rest of my day, it was in between one of those moments, right? Either way, it dawned on me, right? And God was just literally showing me and gave me like the perfect illustration to give you guys. So let's hop along for this disconnected journey and ride. So when I was a little girl, I was very bright, vibrant, bubbly, outspoken, just, man, my light as a little girl was just all that in a bag of chips. I saw something similar. There's this video floating around of this woman's granddaughter. She has on this multicolored tutu, and she was on stage, and she was like the star of the show. And it made me think about when I was in a pre-K performance and we were tap dancers, and I ended up being the star of the show. I was the cutest little girl and everything. And seeing that video reminded me of that. I was very confident. I was a confident little girl. I really was. And the illustration that was given to me, right? So after I had experienced like my first violation or sexual violation, essentially by my mom's husband, I guess I'm gonna go there, right? the illustration that God gave me was that little girl that I just explained to you guys. She left the fucking building, right? That's where the disconnection began, because it left me in a state of confusion. I'm like, if this person is supposed to be essentially a father figure, right? Now, I didn't experience anything like this with my biological dad. And, I just wasn't familiar with men doing things like that, especially as a little girl. You looking to any adult as a place of safety, right? But when that transpired and as it continued to happen, that was kind of one of the areas or one of the moments where the disconnection began. As I shared with you guys in episode 6, furthermore, there was the disconnection. At some point there happened to be honestly role reversal between my mom and I, right? At some point emotionally, she, based on things that she had experienced in her life, right? She didn't have the capacity to be emotionally available, right? So there was that other layer of the disconnection that took place as well, right? So I wasn't getting the emotional support from my mom because she couldn't do it. And then on the other side, I was getting these sexual violations from, the guy she decided to be with, right? And both of those major impacts allowed me and made me fully disconnect from that light, bright, bubbly girl that I remembered being, right? I think all the way up until, I don't know, the age that comes to mind is about 4, right? So as or definitely about the age of 9 for sure, I went into this faux self, right? This perfect Patty, this people pleaser, this dysfunctional, self-sacrificing, voiceless, enmeshed person, thinking that that's who I needed to be, or feeling that I needed to be that person in order to be seen and to be, in order for me to protect myself. But then also that was the faux product, or that was the product of what I had experienced. I hope that makes sense, right? All of those things I listed, that's what was the result. I had became the result of that, right? And that was tough, right? So of course, as I'm showing up in school, as you guys heard in previous podcasts, I dove into my academics, right? I wanted to, again, definitely please my mom. I wanted to please myself, but it was definitely for her. You know what I'm saying? I was a go-getter. I liked being the one, that kid in the classroom raising their hand, pick me. I know the answer. Just wanting to show off how smart I was. And when I think back at it, it honestly was just a way of masking. Not to say that I'm not smart, but, that's where I felt like I was able to kind of hide, my pain or really hide in that this place of disconnection. Right. So we're talking literally from around the age of 9, if not younger, going all the way through my life up until I started, therapy in a real way, and then diving into various forms of ontological coaching and other types of coaching. I was disconnected from my little girl in such a major way. And I had to definitely take a deep sigh with that, because there are so many of us. We are disconnected from that little person. There are things that have happened in all of our lives that has definitely forced us to leave behind our bright self, our default set itself, the person that God thought of us when we were in the wombs of our mother, even before in the wombs of our mother. Life and those life experiences, for some, right, has created such a disconnection that if you're not aware, right, you will be running around here like literally a chicken with your head cut off, because a part of you is not fully connected. And I remembered being in college, and shortly after graduating, this is when I recognized the disconnection. I was dating somebody at the time when I was in college, and in that relationship, it played a very major role in my life. And again, you guys will hear about that in a very soon and recent episode. But I remembered really understanding and really feeling the disconnection then, right? There are moments that I would go to the bathroom and I would just look at myself in the mirror and really not recognize myself. When I looked deep into my eyes, like I could witness and feel that I wasn't myself, that there was this part of me that was disconnected, and I just couldn't put words into it. I think around 25, I remember going to my mom and just letting her really in on how I was feeling. It just seemed like my life at that moment, I wasn't thriving. I was totally in survival, completely in survival. But I had honestly been in survival since, I was a little girl, but definitely understanding at 25, I was just like, I really experiencing a quarter life crisis. And so I went to my mom and I told her, I was like, Mom, like something with me just doesn't feel right. It was that warring of my members within me taking place, right? There was this part of me that needed to return to my true self, right? And then there was this part of me that wanted to remain disconnected and really engulfed in their survival. But then, of course, there was that spirit that was like, hey, I have something on the other side waiting for you. That'll make all of this make sense. and I was in such a eternal turmoil, and I really didn't have like someone who could understand, right? Who could really provide guidance on what that was and can really talk to that. So again, that was 25. I turned around and get pregnant with Matt, right? And you guys are aware that that's where the deeper therapy had began. And so within, again, those first few sessions, I'm learning that I am my first level of safety. I'm learning that, the dysfunction that I had been raised in and conditioned in and groomed in, all were showing up. And so now that names could be put to it, I'm able to really harness, or at least get a better harness of this disconnection thing, right? So as the therapy or whatever began to become deep, there was a part in the therapy, within the coaching and all of those things in between that made me, again, return to little girl. And it was such a powerful reconnection. And it took years. And I'm going to be quite honest. It took years. It took years for me to be able to get reconnected with myself, right? So I had already started, the psychoanalytic therapy. And at some point, that had to pause because, I had Matt, trying to figure out motherhood and all those other things. But then as he got a little bit older, I'm just like, I have to turn to the work, right? I had gotten really engulfed with the work of returning to my true self. So understanding that, we get it. families in general, they have their dysfunctions. But me understanding what my family's dysfunctions were all about, I was just like, I don't know, sitting in some of those sessions, and my spiritual mom can attest to it. I'm like, first of all, don't talk about my mama like that. Like, don't talk about my family like that. And there was like this strong defense to defend the dysfunction, right? To defend the conditioning, because that's what I was aware of. That's what I was, shapened in. And from that, understanding from the therapy that this dysfunction never served my little girl. It never served my spirit. It never had any service. And most importantly, first of all, it silenced the voice. And most importantly, it dimmed my essence. So another layer of coaching that I had began to dive into was with one-on-one coaching. And the person that I spent literally 6 months with, which was a great investment, one of the first things that we had started talking about was my essence, right? And the very first session of that was powerful. What made it powerful was I had to come up with a list of people to contact. I think about 10, maybe 5 to 10 people. And I had to ask them 2 questions, right? And question number 1 was, what shows up when I do? Or what do you see? Or what shows up when I enter a room? If they really couldn't like process and wrap their minds around the very first question, which again is, what shows up when I do? And the people that I called and made contact with, when I reread those things, people always talk about that, I bring laughter, I bring joy, I bring light, and all of those things. And when I brought it to the coach, he was able to help me to identify my essence. Like when I show up to the room, what shows up with me? Number 1 is light, connector, connection, joy, love, and why can I not think of the last one? Oh, that's gonna bother me. I have it written down. It's right here in front of me in one of my notes. And so let me find it. Leader. That's the last one. Leader. And as we began to do work around me operating fully in essence, right? That work was very hard because again, we've already tapped into the dysfunction. We are understanding there's already this disconnect, and understanding at this point in the coaching and therapy that I'm not even connected, number 1, fully to myself, but I'm not even connected really to who God created me to be, right? And honestly, for good reason, based on the things that I had endured, things that I had experienced, the person that I had to become in order to survive, literally in my family. So therapy helped to definitely dive deep into the root. And the point of coaching is to literally help you accelerate your life, right? So as we started talking about essence and the fact that I wasn't clear about it, and hearing that this is what shows up when I do, those were some powerful things, like when people experience me or when they see me, this is what's showing up. This is what's entering the room even before you can put a face to the name. You know what I'm saying? That's powerful, right? But that came with some things. Then it goes back to what I was saying this warring of the members, right? So as I'm getting clear about my essence and my true identity of who I really am, understanding that, of course, with every reaction or with every ideal or with every positive thing, there is an opposite paradigm. So we got into those paradigms that were on the other end, that were in that internal conflict war, right? So if my essence is all of those things that I mentioned, there is that dark side, right? There's that negative paradigm that's always rooting or trying to be in the pilot seat. And so when that lower version or that lower self of me tries to show up, it can take precedence over the essence. And of course, most of my life, like I said, I operated in a space of survival, right? And so here I am, right? I'm trying to get connected, and I'm telling you that warring of those members in that work. Once I tapped into this one-on-one coaching with Corey Collins. I don't know if he still is doing coaching, but shout out to him, because we would be on the phone in those coaching sessions, and he would just really, he literally gave me, number one, the space to be safe, but he also gave me, those love punches, because he understood the assignment. He understood that essentially, like, the essence that I have is similar to his, and he was able to talk to that spirit, to the essence of who I am. And so prior, and this is me kind of going backwards, because prior to meeting with Corey, I kind of put the coaching, like I started coaching with Linnell Harris. And so it was like with his group membership, and with that, really diving into this part where I was stuck, right? Like, we're talking career stuck, and I felt stuck, right? Like, how do I go from survival Melvina to thriving Melvina? How do I go from disconnected to connected? And he was the one to kind of, number one, allow me to experience what ontological coaching was, and what it could really do literally for my life. And for me, I focused on my career in that space, and we had a lot of really great milestones, a lot of great achievements. With that coaching, I was able to go from making literally just a smidget, less than 30K a year, to over 60K per year. And that's not including what taxes and deductions and all that other stuff, but that's the gross. I wish that was my net, but either way. So after working with him, then going to the Murder Mediocrity Summit and going through those powerful small group coaching, sessions. And then that's how I was able to be introduced to Corey. And then, working with Corey for 6 months, that was pretty pivotal, and then I'm not going to lie, I kind of got into like therapy. Like, I really engulfed myself into therapy, into coaching in ways that I knew that were going to be beneficial for me. My girlfriend, who was the owner of Revelations from the Water, I remember doing some coaching with her, and it was powerful. We talked about one of her acronyms of spirit, and the S stands for surrender, right? So we walked through all of those steps, and I'm gonna really take some time here with the part of surrendering, right? So understanding that, first of all, we are human beings having a spiritual we're spiritual beings. I take that back. We're spiritual beings having a human experience, right? So as I talked about essence earlier, like, essence is essentially your spirit that's walking in the door or is illuminating the room before people can even hear your actual voice, right? And in order for that to really show up and take precedence in a room, you have to surrender the human side of yourself and literally allow God to, use you as a vehicle and a vessel in any space that you walk into. And so as we were going over what surrenderance really meant, I was just like, yo, this is tough because in survival and disconnected self, I felt that I needed to be in control at all times. Even we're talking not even allowing the creator himself to literally be of guide to me. And that's just being honest, right? And understanding that surrenderance, we're talking, that meant trust. That meant really allowing yourself to let go of things that you thought of or how you thought things should be. And really resting in that space of letting go, not trying to be in control, not trying to allow your past to dictate your future, and really allowing God to use you as he had already ordained and planned for you to be used, right? And so that was definitely one of the things that was the major takeaway in that type of coaching. But then when I met up with Cantice Burrell, man, I hope she doesn't mind that I put her whole name out there. You can connect with her in her business, in her coaching with living in my worth or living my worth. And she's all about women empowerment. And working with her has been amazing. And I came across something that was super amazing. And I hope I've pinned it correctly here. So one of the things that came up for me with Cantice was I was in transition. I was definitely in that transition of first being disconnected, right, to being connected. And I believe this is what I want to read, right? So I have here written and I believe this is from one of our sessions where I talked about, or where she talked about that, I'm in transition from Melvina of who she was to who she is, and definitely harnessing that. And I thought that was definitely powerful to share in this space, because as you are on this road or in the process of reconnecting, that transition process is very delicate. It's very delicate. It's very hard, but all in all is necessary. And for some people, they can read a book and they can really look within themselves to do that work. But people like myself, I needed help because all of this shit sounded foreign to me. I knew what I was experiencing on the inside. But I needed to surround myself with other people who, number one, had the skills as well as the knowledge to help literally birth the person on the other side of the transition. With her, I learned about validating myself, really validating the person that I've always been. Also with her, we were able to do assignments and skills that allowed me to really practice forgiveness with myself and to be very gentle with myself. And that's something that I'm still harnessing and working on, right? The grace that I'm able to give to some people. There are some people who I'm working on. Again, as I shared earlier, there are some people who I'd be like, fuck them, or what would Jesus do? So I'm trying to figure out where do they lie on the spectrum, and how do I, either totally eliminate them out of my life or in between, just give myself some balance, and extend grace to those. But either way, prior to, or essentially after having so many therapy sessions with my spiritual mom, diving deep with, or kind of, continuing to chip away at the surface with like Linnell, but then getting really dive deep into who I really am, right, with Corey. And then here comes Cantice, right? With Cantice, I was able to get into the true part of connecting back with little girl Melvina. And one of the exercises that we did was writing a forgiveness letter, right? Now, if you're familiar with like the forgiveness letter process, you know, some people have different ways that you can go about it, right? It's a 3-part process for some. And honestly, you can modify it to whatever makes you feel happy. Some say the very first letter, you write out exactly how you feel, like no holds bar. You just go at it, pen and paper, letting it all out. Then you kind of like revise the letter a little bit and do a second draft. And then there's a third draft. And some, you know, coaches or therapists may even recommend that you mail the letter to the person just so that you can really clear that energy. And I came across my forgiveness letter that I wrote as adult Melvina to little girl Melvina. And I remembered in one of our sessions reading it to her, and she was like, you wrote that? The fact that you were able to really just write what I wrote to little girl Melvina was just amazing. And I came across it today. I haven't really reread it since I wrote it, but today I did. And I want to share that letter with you guys because writing a forgiveness letter as an adult to your little girl self is very helpful. And then on the flip side, allowing the little girl in you, right, to literally have her voice to write to you. And I believe that she and we did do that part. Unfortunately, I can't find it. I'm sure it's in one of my journals, but I'm going to take a moment and read what I wrote as adult Melvina to little girl Melvina as she and I have been able to reconnect. So I wrote here, "Dear little girl," Cantice made me give her a name, and that's what I came up with. So, dear little girl, I'm so sorry for never acknowledging your strength. You were so brave and powerful back then. And I've spent the last 2 decades trying to get back to that strong, bold, and brave person. You were and always was the real one. And I apologize for never counting your greatness in. Please forgive me. I accept your anger towards me. We now can share in that commonality. I ask that we connect and move forward together in love and harmony. I didn't know, but now that I do, I want us to be the dynamic team we were always destined to be. And I'm not going to lie, even after reading that, it's absolute chills. And so that was a letter, a forgiveness letter to the little girl who, as she was experiencing what she was experiencing, she at some point still had the voice to say to her predator, the likes, the dislikes that she had experienced. I thought that she was completely voiceless, and she wasn't. You know, she definitely stood up in ways that I didn't acknowledge. And as I was continuing to allow the faux and facade person to reign supreme and take pilot over our lives, I had to go back and say to her that I see you and I saw what you've done. And now we can join forces together with that boldness, with that strong and powerful voice that's always been there, and take on these cycles, these patterns, changing up the trajectory of this family's lineage, and allow people to be safe in our space so that they can do exactly what I say at the very beginning of every episode, and that is to return to their true self. So I encourage you in this episode to get under some dynamic therapy. Tap into some awesome coaches if that's what serves you. Grab hold to some amazing self-help books that really speak to you and your disconnection. As you continue to get closer to that reconnection that I've been able to get to with my little girl, please do yourself a favor and a service to you and her. And even if it's the little boy in you, whatever that inner child is, whoever that inner child is, write them a letter, speak to them. Know that they have been there, that they tried their best in those situations that you've gone through. And then at some point, allow that little girl or little boy to come up and speak to you. Let them tell you what their experience of you have been or has been, so that you all can, again, join in dynamic forces and return to the true self that was, again, created before the foundation of this world, before you were inserted, implanted, and conceived in your mother's womb. Do that for yourself, because there's freedom there. There's so much freedom. There's so much resilience. There's so much power there. And I will talk to you all in the next episode. I love you, and happy healing and happy connecting.